Yes, unfortunately, I have been in the situation where I've learned a male colleague is earning more than me. And I can tell you it's disheartening and it's really difficult not to take that personally. The best thing you can do is advocate for yourself, approach it with confidence, be matter of fact and not emotional, and use very, very specific examples to make your case. It's not about, hey, that's not fair. It is about, I have done X, Y, Z to deliver value to the business. These have been my results. And therefore, I believe I am deserving of X pay raise.
In terms of advocating for yourself, I think, first of all, you have to be yourself in those conversations, that you can't put on a fake person who's going to be very aggressive on pursuing things if that's not who you are. You have to do it in your own way. But I think it's also preparing yourself, thinking about why it's mutually beneficial to, if you're asking for a promotion, if you're feeling that you're not being compensated from the work that you're doing, to present it as something that's mutually beneficial in terms of making it better for me, also makes it better for the firm or the organization. And when you come from that perspective, then you're not just speaking for yourself, a mutual conversation in terms of how we make this better for everybody.
Use specifics. So don't wait for others to just notice them. If you've got examples on hand, like I delivered X automation opportunities, which increased efficiency, reduced expenses by X%, give specific examples really does help then as well too.
I found that the more successful approach is to try and be as objective as possible and really to lean towards educating versus lecturing. And the nuance there is gather the data, show what you've been able to contribute to the business. Don't assume that the person that you're advocating with has actually gone deep into what you've done, and just show, here's how I compare, here's what I'm seeing in the market, and assume positive intent. They want to go into that room and advocate for you. They want to have a good outcome, particularly if you've been contributing positively to the business. And so just give them the objective points that they need to advocate on your behalf.
I don't think at the time when I made the decision to move and start a new career that it was that important to me, or how much of an impact it had in my career or the person I am right now. Looking back, I think I learned a lot in being a leader. I came in at a point where I was able to get my hands dirty, understand how the organization work. I asked a lot of questions. I was learning a new industry. I was learning how the finance functions operationally. I implemented a new ERP. I led a new team with diverse skill sets and personality. And this helped me all become a better leader and a coach. It allowed me to adapt my communication style and embrace the perspectives of people at different levels. And that helped me be a better listener, be more collaborative with my peers, and help strengthen the department and kept finance top of mind for some of these key decisions now. And being people-oriented as opposed to just putting numbers first, which a lot of finance teams are, helped me put finance at high respect across the organization now.
Early in your career, you should absolutely, when you are more elastic potentially to risk, take as many big leaps as possible, because they aren't necessarily failures. It's not binary, it's a journey, it's all experience. So taking those risks, getting that experience is all incredibly helpful from a professional perspective.
We call it a career path, and it really is. I like the story of taking a step back. Sometimes you have to recognize where you are and what it's going to take to get to the next step in that career journey, even if it's a hard one to take. That's my biggest advice, is to really recognize that it's a journey, and recognize that there are moments that either aren't going to be fun or aren't what your original plan was. And I think it's the ability to recognize that and be flexible along the way.
I think my biggest obstacle was making that switch, making that transition from agency, working on many different brands, to fully focusing on one brand and understanding the ins and outs and processes of the company itself. I think that was probably the biggest obstacle in my career, because for 20 years I was doing a very similar role, but many different challenges along the way. And here I was coming to be a leader of a global marketing team. And that was brand new for me, and understanding all of the aspects of the business that I needed to do. And for me, I think the way I did it was I just continued to force myself to learn and ask questions and spend time really understanding and shadowing others in my organization to understand what they do and how they contribute to the company, so that I can see how all those pieces fit together. And as I said, you have to be willing to put the time in and the energy to understand it. And you can't go into a new environment and a new role where you have gaps and expect everything to fall into place perfectly. You need to take the time to figure it all out and understand there's a learning curve. And I accepted it. Here I am today, loving everything that I'm doing.
One of my biggest obstacles was back in New York. There I was, a new mom. My relationship was breaking down, and I was at the top of my career, and I was required to have long dedicated hours, whether they be business meetings or trips on a whim. And I was an independent parent with a small child at home and no community around me. And it was hard. And I remember saying to myself, I can't have both. I can't have it all. And that was just such a negative talk track. So I changed that talk track and tried to figure out, what will I need so that I can have it all? What are the gaps I have right now that I need to change so that I can get to a place where I can have it all? And so that meant coming back to Canada. It meant looking for a place in Canada where I could be back near my community of family and friends who could support me in a job that was flexible and that allowed me to be the best at both worlds, which is, leaving work early to go to parent teacher or to pickups for a small sick child, or to be able to go across the globe and lead a platform and an implementation that was going to set the company in a different direction. And I think probably changing that talk track and then making sure I was very clear with what I needed to be successful and asking for that help along the way. If I did not ask, I don't think anybody would have known what I needed.
Learning to receive and grow from criticism. I think that that's a really hard thing to learn how to do. I think that it's easy to take criticism very personally, but when you realize that a lot of criticism isn't personal, and to be able to grow and learn from it and take criticism and change kind of the way you're doing things and be able to be more productive, I think that that's really important. And it's something that I'm still continuing to, try and do and to grow in different ways, but that's really where the opportunities are.
If you're feeling nervous or you're scared of it, run towards it. Because, really, what is the worst that can happen? You jump into it, it's not what you expected, so you can always go back to whatever industry you were in before. So don't let fear get in the way of things, because that's something that's in your head and it's not necessarily reality.
I've never said that's not my job. Even if it wasn't, I think I'd just say dig in and help out. You'll learn something, you'll broaden your knowledge base, broaden your network and relationships. And I think your willingness to support will be remembered.
To think strategically about your career and plan for your career. So often we get so busy in what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, and you're just kind of putting your one foot in front of the other and dealing with the things that are facing you on a day-to-day basis. But you need to take that time to sit back and think about your career and where you want it to go, and to think about what are some of the things that you need to do to help take your career in the direction that you want it to go.
Don't be afraid to speak up, and don't be hesitant to make your opinion and voice heard.
Women can bring to those fields now and in the future is undeniable and is going to be invaluable. So I hope that all women watching this proceed and do so boldly, because the future's bright. recruit and staff with people that are representative of all of those communities and perspectives and backgrounds and skill sets to create mass communications for the population at large. We track it. It's something that we always have an eye to in recruitment. And then we have a focus on now more development and mentorship and sponsorship once our team and our staff are within the organization. And then we do run a lot of cultural programming within the company to create education, empathy, and awareness. Not only do we want representation from a staffing perspective and from a staff mix perspective, but we want absolutely everyone to be as aware as possible and as educated as possible about different perspectives. And having done that and had to focus on that for a number of years now, we're quite proud to see that that's manifesting in a lot of the work that we do.
3 things I would say here. The first is I try to be a model and be the change that I want to see. And so showing up for those meetings, really advocating for diversity, not just saying it's important to you, but where you have influence, adjusting systems and processes to root out systemic bias, and hiring and promoting a diverse team, right? So be the model and be the change that you want to see. Number 2, I try to be an ally. I recognize the privileges that I have in the senior leadership position that I'm in. And so I try to be the voice for the underrepresented in those meetings. I try to pull folks up behind me wherever I can. And I try to have the contrary view of, well, how would that underrepresented group feel based on the conversation and the decision that we're making? I chair the Indigenous Employee Resource Group as an ally, right? So I'm there as the executive sponsor. I make sure they're getting the support. And then through that process, I'm getting educated, right? I'm understanding more about that experience and how I might help. Number 3 is I'm always doing what I can to mentor women, and particularly women of color, both within my organization and within my network. So at any given time, I've got a roster going of women that I feel I can help in some shape or form. Either we have shared experiences, similar backgrounds, they're trying to go for something where I feel like I've got a particular skill set or strength. And so through those one-to-one relationships, I try to influence and assist where I can.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being vulnerable or showing your vulnerability from time to time. In fact, I think it shows that you're human. I can honestly say I'm a vulnerable person. I am. And I think that is really important. And I work with primarily women. We're 90% women in our organization. And as a leader, it's important to show your vulnerability in a way that is authentic and real in you. and you can't hide that. The more important thing is, how is that received?
Being vulnerable as a leader is actually a key characteristic of a really strong leader. I don't know how somebody who always sort of acts as though they've got all the answers, they're really directive with everything, can actually inspire and build loyalty among their team members. When you ask the question and are willing to present yourself and show confidence that you're okay saying, I don't have all the answers, and I want to include all of you in the problem-solving process and the ideation, that's going to make people feel valued. They're going to want to invest. They're going to be motivated. It's really a defining characteristic of greatness in leadership to me. So it's really, really crucial. And I think that idea of having to be the one who knows everything is a really outdated notion of leadership.
A few years back, I was asked to make a presentation at the end of a conference. It was a portfolio manager conference. They had been sitting down most of the day listening to presentations. And so they asked me to come at the beginning of the cocktail hour and to make a speech around diversity in the workplace. And I spent a lot of time preparing for this. I was actually quite nervous. It was mostly men in the room, mostly senior men at this conference. My kids and my husband probably heard the speech one too many times in advance. And as I got up to speak, the room was way more focused on having their cocktails than they were on what my speech was. And no matter how much shushing the conference organizers or I tried to get the room to quiet down, they wouldn't. And so I had to make a decision, and I pushed through and I made my speech to the 5 people in the front of the room that were there probably very mortified for me as I tried to speak above all of the noise in the room. And that was really embarrassing for me. That was very hard. And at the end of it, nobody heard anything I said, but the 5 people, including actually one woman on my team who had come to support me in the speech, really said to me, it's amazing that you had the confidence and the perseverance to get through that, despite the fact that you knew everyone was talking and no one was listening. And I think that was the big lesson for me, is perseverance is a hard thing to learn, to push through. That's something I would say I'm not great at. And I did it there, and that helped me, again, push myself a little outside the comfort zone, and will be a little more perseverant the next time something like that happens.
I'd say when it comes to making tough decisions, it's really critical that you stick to your values and what's important to you, to really sit down and think about, why are we doing this? And in many cases, it's somebody who just doesn't have the right fit for the organization. And sometimes you feel bad when you're doing it, but in many cases, you're getting the person as well as the firm to a better place at the end of the day, where the individual can go on to somewhere where they're going to be successful, as opposed to struggling through where they are at today when it's not a good fit for them. But as I said, being true to your values and thinking about the individual that you're talking to and what this means to them, having empathy for them, treating them with dignity and respect. And it's amazing over the years, when you have some of those tough conversations, you may well, end up working with that individual again. And if you've treated them with respect and properly through the process, that's not awkward.
The short answer is yes. And most of my career, I've been mentored by men.
I think the male-female relationship can bring different perspectives. As long as there's trust, you need that for a mentor-mentee relationship to work. So it doesn't matter if it's female-female, male-male, or vice versa. The trust needs to be there. And if the trust is there, then the mentor relationship will work.
Some of my most influential managers and mentors in my life have been men. They helped me make connections. They gave me big step-up projects that allowed me to prove what I could do for the organization, and they challenged me to take on bigger and bigger roles. One of my biggest supporters during my time at Uber was a former manager. He happened to be a man, and he really broke the mold when I came back from maternity leave in promoting me. So he sent a very clear signal upon the second week that I returned from maternity leave to say, despite the fact that Faye has been gone for over half the year, her prior performance tells me everything I need to know.
I had a boss one time tell me very early in my career, he called me after my interview and said, I have a choice today. I can do the easy thing or I can do the right thing. What do you think you are? And he said, you're not the easy thing because you don't know anything about this company. You don't know anything. You're just brand new, fresh out of school. But the right thing to do would be to hire you and to invest in you. And I am so lucky for that. And I think there's something really special about taking a chance and finding the right kinds of people to bring in and then round out the gaps around because people can learn.
They helped me realize certain things that I was doubting myself about. Helped me realize that I did have the skill set. I did have the talent to really lead this client and be able to be promoted as well.
The best piece of advice I received was that it's okay to ask questions, and that you don't need to know everything, and that's how you learn. And it's also a very efficient way to get answers.
Work on your strengths, not just your weaknesses, because I think there's development plans and what's viewed as a weakness or something you need to work on. But you've also got strengths, and how do you continue to build on those and enhance those? Because those are what are really going to take you forward then as well too. And then surround yourself instead with people that will help complement where maybe you have, it's maybe not your strong suit.